Hmm. Hey everyone, Ravi here.
Hey everyone, Nikhil here. Welcome back. So, what are we going to
Yes.
talk about today?
We're going to talk about friendship. Friendship from a perspective of Mahabharata. Uh, there are a few friendships there in that story that is worth talking about because, again, we can talk about the contemporariness and comment on the decisions taken by each characters, and we can judge. We are sitting here as judges, or like. Um, so I think it's worth talking about it. And as a coincidence, yesterday it was Friendship Day, I guess. And I know like we both don't celebrate days as such, uh, but yeah, it's a nice coincidence.
Yeah, they didn't have friendship days during Mahabharata, so I don't.
Yep.
Anyway,
Okay.
okay. So yeah, so the story is about Karna, right? So for just to give an introduction, I guess in Indian society or in parlance, like the ideal for a friendship is always Karna is known as the perfect friend or the ideal friend. And I guess this is the story of Karna set in the Mahabharata and how or why he's seen as the ideal friend, basically. So, over to you for the story.
Or yeah, why he's seen as a maybe a great friend, and maybe there are people who don't see that way. So it's a really good topic to talk about. So getting into the story, so yes, there are two sides, two teams. One is the Pandavas and the Kauravas, right? So we talked about this in the last two videos. So Karna um, is actually the first born son of Pandava's mom, but he was born before she was maybe married, and he was born out of wedlock. So she didn't own him, and so he grew up as a person of underprivileged community, and so he was not royalty. He grew up as a son of a charioteer. So in those days in Indian society, that's not at the top of the mountain, or it's in terms of social status, and even in terms of economy, in terms of power, in terms of respect in society, it wasn't the best. Uh, okay, so Karna was a very talented archer. He was a very talented warrior, but he never got formal education from the royal guru Dronacharya, just like the other princes got. So most of it was he had other gurus, other teachers, but he was turned away by all the gurus of that time because he was not worthy. He was not highborn, to borrow a term from the Game of Thrones universe. He was not highborn, so that was forbidden knowledge for him, and they could not teach him.
He was a
So
Jon
that was
Snow of the Mahabharata, that's what you're saying.
what's that?
He is a Jon Snow of the Mahabharata.
He was you can say that, but he doesn't know that. He always thought that he
Jon
was,
Snow didn't know it either.
but I wouldn't call him a bastard because he knew he had a parent, he had a mother. So his mom was Radhe. His one of his names is Radhe. So because he had a mom, he had a dad. So they were like maybe adopted him, but he didn't know that. He always thought that they were his real parents. So anyway, so yes, I do understand that in terms of uh, how people treated him. Yes, he was treated like Jon Snow maybe in the first season or so. Um, because Jon Snow raised in his stature as the series went by. But anyway, we'll talk about it. So he was very talented, and during the story there is a tournament for royal princes. There comes a tournament where all the royal princes, the Pandavas and Kauravas, showcase their talent, see who is the best and all that. And so Arjuna was touted on paper as the best warrior in the world, as the best archer in the world, and his teacher, he was the greatest teacher on earth, Dronacharya. So he promised him that you are my best student, so nobody's better than you. You are the best, and I'll make sure you're the best. I'll teach you all that. So during this tournament, Karna wanted to try his talents. He wanted to challenge Arjuna. He wanted to prove that he was better, but he was not allowed to participate in the tournament because he was told that you're not royalty, and no, you don't belong here, so you can't exhibit or showcase your talents. No, we don't take you. So that's when Duryodhana, the supposed like bad guy, the baddest guy in the story, um, he embraced Karna. So there are conflicting theories on like why he did it. People say it was due to selfish reason that he wanted an arch nemesis for Arjuna's. He wanted to cultivate someone who's a great archer and on a side. And there is also people saying no, he was genuinely a friend to Karna. He liked him, and he liked them. So it has conflicting versions of that. So he came up to Karna and say like they made introductions and he said like, no, you're my friend. I see you as an equal. I don't see you as an inferior and all that. And Radha or Karna, he had not an inferiority complex. He just told that people look down upon me because I'm not royalty. And the Duryodhana just made him a prince. He said like, where are you from? He said the name of the kingdom he was now residing in. Okay, I'll make you the king of that place. So now you're royalty. Now on paper you're equal to me. So now you can compete with these princes and all that. So when he did that, nobody had treated Karna that way ever in his life with such kindness, compassion, or generosity. So Karna was known for like gratefulness, and he said that he just wrote a blank check to you like, ask me of anything. I'll be a lifelong friend to you, and I will be your shadow. I'll fight your enemies. I'll be there till the end, no matter what. Um, Anyone can leave you, but I won't leave you. So it was it was sealed for life. I think the friendship, and Duryodhana was elated, and he too liked him, embraced him. So that was the origin of the story, or origin of the friendship between Karna and Duryodhana. Any comments so far?
Not a comment, but I just wanted to also probably add that so Karna was also one of those characters who has a very strong principle or like core values that he believed in and he would never waver from it, no matter
You
what.
say moral compass? Moral compass? Is that a
Like
word?
he had a set of values that he would never detract from basically. So he would always do what his values told him was the right thing to do. And I think one of those things which Karna was known to never say no to anyone. Like he was one of those people who would never refuse to help if asked. So I guess that is also something we have to mention as part of the story because I think it plays a bigger role into his story because that was one of his characteristics or major traits was that he never refused to help anyone regardless of if he could help them or not. Like even if it meant that he would lose something by helping them, he would say yes to it. Like he always put
So
others over himself.
yeah, he was known as Danavir Karna, so he was the most charitable or the most generous person on the planet during that time, fictional time or whatever. We are talking about literature, right? So yeah, so he was the most charitable, generous person. Even his enemies knew it. Nobody could. So there are only certain people or certain traits. Like if even your enemy acknowledges it, so that means like you have that like going for you, like very credible. So even his enemies or detractors acknowledged that he was the best in that sense. Like he was charitable, generous, and also grateful. So this is an interesting theme we talk about. Like each character in the story, they have a set of principles and values, but they hold on and hatch on to certain one thing which defines their identity. So for example, last week we talked about Bhishma. For him, it was all about honor and keeping his word and his oath. But for Karna, it's again his loyalty to his friend, his gratefulness. So it even happens like every human being, even now, like subconsciously we have a set of values, morals, and so ethics. Some are we don't compromise with, some we compromise with, some are like hold dear to us. We never negotiate or compromise with that. That defines a part of us. For some people may not be, but it's a feature even now. It's interesting to read the human personality, human mind that way. So how we live our lives. So for some people it comes via like a religion. Some people it comes via work. So lots of different things. So back to the topic. So yes, we should mention that he was really generous. So what happens is so. how the story is narrated is that we all know, or it's well known, that Duryodhana does a lot of bad acts throughout the story. Uh, so the criticism of Karna was he was taken through that period or that time, and he never once questioned or stopped his friend from doing anything bad. Because he said, "I'm loyal to you, and I'll do whatever you say. Not whatever you say. I'll always support your decision. You're my man." It's kind of the band mentality, like bonded to life, for example. So that's something like people see even in a positive light and negative light. So that's something we can comment about. So we know, like, he didn't stop Duryodhana from seducing, or not seducing. Seducing is the wrong word. Um, uh, Trying to manipulate Yudhishthira into playing the game of dice, and betting his kingdom, his brothers, and also the act of disrobing Draupadi. So he didn't stop. He even, like, he was even drunk. He was drunk, and he even also played along. So that he even in the later in the story he regretted that. But anyway, he turned a blind eye to many of bad acts that Duryodhana did. But so people see that, oh, he was his best friend. He has to back his man. But that's where the commentary modern day, or even then, like, is he a good friend? Was he a good friend? Was he maybe a little glorified? Yes, he was loyal, but is loyalty everything in a friendship? So that's what I want to ask you.
Uh, I don't know. I don't know. So I would say there's many flavors of friendships. There's no one ideal version of friendship, and I guess it could just be a a ploy of storytelling that in Mahabharata the characters are they have these really strong set of principles that they hold on to regardless of how extreme the the situation is. They're always going back to that core values, and I don't think in the real world people hold on to their values that tightly regardless of how extreme the situation is, because I would like to think that the the two extremes, like, people really aren't who they are. They behave in a very different way. But again, the question about is loyalty everything in a friendship? I don't think loyalty is everything in a friendship, but I think loyalty is still really important in a friendship. I guess that's probably one of the strongest pillars upon which a friendship is built, I guess. Um, and and I don't think it's something that is very explicitly thought about. Like I'm just thinking about my friends or anything, and a lot of times your friends are people who you grew up with, and I think your friends because of there's a common bond, there's a common history, there's common memories and, like, stories that are associated with it that, like, strengthen that bond between the two of you. And then I guess that act of having that shared history and, like, shared memories sort of forces you to stay loyal to that person in many ways, because that is one person, or that friendship in many ways is proof of your past, of yourself, or you're, like, in many ways, like, your friends are a reflection of who you are. And if you're not really loyal to your friends, then are you even loyal to yourself in many ways? So I guess that's where the question
Okay,
goes
so
towards.
I have a hypothetical question for you. So, in a modern sense, for example, and it might be an extreme example, but it does happen. So, just imagine that we both are friends, okay? And so, just imagine like one of us is planning something barbaric, something criminal, like maybe stealing or robbing a bank, or like maybe killing someone, or so really a bad act. So, and then is this a responsibility of a friend, as a friend, to like play along with that, or like tell me, stop me from doing that crime or doing that? And if I don't listen to you, even maybe go snitch on me, break that loyalty, go snitch on me to the cops, because you are, even in snitching, you're acting in my self-interest, because you're trying to prevent a crime. If I do that and I go to jail, I'll suffer for 10 years. Maybe if I'm stopped before I commit that crime, I maybe just go for 2 years or 3 years. So even in the act of snitching, you are acting in my self-interest and also for the greater good. But but society doesn't see that ways. Snitching is like really looked down upon, and I bring this point because even in like just take a environment of the economy, or not the economy, of offices, like departments, different departments. So cops, for example, cops don't snitch on each other. Even so, it's kind of the internal. They put everything under the carpet, and so that's bad for society. They may be great pals with each other, but they may see each other as great pals, but they are actually not. It's causing harm to society as well as it's causing harm to each other. For example, in any department, like nobody snitches on each other. Say, no, he's my friend. I can't snitch on me. But so what are your thoughts? You may know where I'm going with this, where my viewpoints are.
So yeah, I get what you mean by like society's views on basically snitching, or like in a way it's seen as being disloyal to your community or your set of people or your friends, basically. And while society might think that, from a legal perspective, it is still wrong. Not doing something or being an accomplice for a criminal act is still a criminal offense itself. So, from a legal perspective, it's wrong. From a moral perspective, I guess it depends on where you're seeing it from. So, I'm one of those people who would call out my friends' bullshit. Like if they're doing something wrong, I would tell it to their face that they're doing something wrong. That's me, but there's probably other people out there who don't think that's the way friendship works. A lot of people might think that being friends would mean you have to agree with them all the time. And so I guess that's where the different flavors of actually being a friend comes into play. But with regards to talking about something like you mentioned about cops or the police and how they don't really snitch on each other. And I've heard one of the arguments given in that sense is that if suppose you and me are policemen and we're working together, and if for some reason you found out that I had in my past complained about one of my colleagues on a different case and like had him fired, and that would put you in a position to like subconsciously you would never trust me 100%. And for policemen who are
trust you, I wouldn't trust you if I knew I was doing something bad. So that's where my slight disagreement with you is. It like, so why should I be worried if you actually did the right thing? Maybe your ex-friend was taking a bribe and you saw that and you tried to stop him from doing that. He didn't listen to you, so you maybe did that, like do the snitching or something.
True, but then
so where does the loyalty and like the gray like?
But the argument is that once someone goes against the group, you're never seen as part of the group. And like, so professions like police and or the army, and like basically these are people whose day to day is in extreme situations where they have this sort of a unique it's pretty much a very tight closed circle, and if you're in that circle, there's like you're sort of expected, or that's how those groups are built upon. You're sort of expected to go along with what the group thinks is right. You cannot really have an individual perspective in those cases. And once you start having an individual perspective, it means you're not part of the group anymore, and you won't be seen as a part of the group anymore. So that's where that's very, very specific professions. I don't think it applies in a lot of different areas in life. Like so a profession like, so companies, like if you talk about really companies that are in like the forefront or the cutting edge of technology and such, they thrive on conflict. They thrive on people actually challenging each other a lot. Places like NASA would like, people are expected to challenge and talk about things that they don't agree on. So I guess that's the dichotomy of, I guess it's really about which group or what kind of work you do. But I don't think that that's the nature of friendship.
Applicable to anywhere. My basic question is, is does loyalty supersede, or is it a responsibility of the friend inherently to stick with your friend whatever he does, or to call his bullshit out and to stop him from doing bad things? Because in the case of Mahabharata and so many other cases, we don't see that happening. We see people being glorified for being sticking to their friend, like being close bonded, no matter what they did. That's seen as like glorification. Oh, he's a great friend. He's loyal and all that. But should that be the case? Instead of like saying it does it depend upon individual perceptions and what they hold dear and all that. Do you think they both are equal?
Um, I don't know. Like at least in the case of the Mahabharata, I think it's a case of one of those pieces where like Karna overall is seen as a good person. Like his deeds are seen to be someone of like his deeds basically speak of being good. Like his values are good. Like he's very charitable. He's always helping people. So he's overall a good person. And so I guess they take that and they apply that to all of his actions in the past, no matter how questionable they are. And they use that since he's a good person, everything he does has to be good. So in a way, his actions as a friend are seen as the ideal version of a friend, even though it might not necessarily be. Like he is also someone who is probably one of the great characters where the things he did in the name of loyalty are not exactly what he should do as a friend. But I think his story suffers from the fact that since he's good, everything he has done has to be good. And I don't necessarily would agree with that argument anytime.
Yeah. So this is where I disagree with the conventional narrative that the ideal example of a good friend is Karna. This is where, like, personally, I differ from the conventional narrative and conventional, like, storytelling. Because in the same story, I look towards a different friendship, which is, in my opinion, personal opinion, the better way or the actual good friend, and that is the friendship between Krishna and Arjuna. So Krishna was not only a friend, he was a philosopher, he was a guide to Arjuna. So he always had Arjuna's best interests in mind, but he never allowed him to do something stupid or something very, very wrong, obviously wrong, or he always showed him the right path or like tried to talk to him and try to do it rather than just play along with whatever he did. For example, there was a time when Arjuna was not motivated for war and he didn't want to maybe go to war against his relatives, and that was the blood, the tribalism that was preventing him from doing it. But Krishna showed no. He also showed him the objectivity, why you need to do this and all that. And also, like when he wouldn't fight well against Bhishma, the commander of the opposing army, Krishna broke his own oath of not lifting a weapon, so that would motivate Arjuna. Arjuna just came back to say, no, I'll fight with twice the determination. Now, please, you don't break your oath and like come back. So I'll do it. So friends have to keep each other in check. And rather than just, oh, I'm loyal to you, and I'll do whatever, I'll play along with you. So this is the beauty of the Mahabharata, in my opinion. Like in the same story, there are differing examples. So yeah, some people still stick to Karna was a great friend. I would like to become like him. But for me personally, when I look into this one, Krishna Arjuna, that was the better role model friendship, or like something to learn from, or even like adopt in terms of qualities, or like just being influenced by that. So that's where I differ from like. People don't talk about Krishna and Arjuna friendship that much. They talk about Duryodhana and Karna, the glorification of that. But for me, like in the same story, that's the beauty. You have examples where you can like, it's like something for everyone, I guess.
Okay, so yeah, so that I think that is an interesting point about so the two flavors of friendship in the same story. I guess that's an interesting point. So I think I agree with you on that, where I don't necessarily think of Karna as the ideal friend. Well, I'll probably go a step further and say I don't think there's an ideal friend at all. Like I think it differs for each person, and there's probably, I wouldn't even say that it differs for each person. I'd say for each person, there's probably a different set of ideal friends in different situations. I probably think that's a better version of my theory of it, is because I guess there are times when you need your friends to call out your bullshit. There are times when you need certain group of people to say to your face that you're being an asshole or you're doing something wrong. And there are times when you need the kind of friends who would go along with anything, regardless of how stupid your decisions are. I guess it depends on the situation, right? So you also need the kind of friend who'll stick with you through thick and thin, and like through the bad times, and like to get you through the worst of times. And you also need the kind of friend who would really, really like just rap on your knuckles, or basically like wave the red light or red flag and say like, stop what you're doing. You're basically going to like cause a lot of problems for everyone, basically. So I guess in that sense, I see what you mean by Krishna being the ideal friend, in the sense that so he doesn't necessarily want a war. I think Krishna doesn't necessarily want it to go to a war, but then he also realizes that there is no other choice in this case, where the Pandavas really have to fight their own family, literally go to war and kill them in order to get justice in many ways. And so I guess, so he sees that what he's actually advising Arjuna to do, basically to fight his own family and kill them, I think he understands that it's a wrong thing. He understands Arjuna's moral confusion, or basically his own problems when he's in that battlefield and he refuses to fight. And I think Krishna understands his perspective, or understands his big confusion at that point. And I think that is where he really shows his true colors as a friend, because he understands that it's a problem that he has to kill his family, but then he also brings that objectivity, as you said, about how it is the right thing to do for them to get their justice, because they were wrong. And the war is not something that they wanted. They didn't ask for the war, but war was something that was given to them as the only option for them to get their justice, right? And yeah, so again goes to the point where he makes a vow to make sure that he doesn't. So he has a vow, basically. So he sticks to his vow, but then he's willing to break his own vows for a friend, which is again shows that he's willing to put his friend's needs against, or over and above his personal values or things like that. So I guess we are in agreement on that right now, and I think that's interesting storytelling, I guess, in a way, the way it's written.
Yeah, I think you can be both actually, in a kind, like, so these are two different extremes, like preventing your friend from doing everything and you condescendingly advising him on everything. That's one extreme, and not letting him be himself and just overbearing. That's one extreme, and the other extreme is just going along with whatever he says and does and not challenging him. So I think there can also be middle ground, like, yes, you will stick with him through thick and thin and support him, but also just challenge him whenever possible when he is going the wrong path, and it's your, in my opinion, personal opinion, it's your moral responsibility to stop something being, like, if bad happening, or like he's going the wrong path. It's your responsibility to stop that from happening, rather than just let it go. Yes, it's your responsibility to at least bring to his attention. You cannot always control outcomes. You can never out-control outcomes, but you can at least say that, yes, I tried. I told him not to do this. So you have done your job as a friend. And then he didn't listen to you. He anyway did it and got into trouble. Then that's on him. So I say that because these are two different extremes, and there's always something there, and people always tend to be attracted to extremes. So it can be both. Like we can do a little bit of both, and so that's where I think about this and conclude.
Yeah, so I guess that in a nutshell, it's basically a spectrum of, like, I think where we started was pretty much the same thing. There's no one flavor of friendship. It has to be a spectrum of, as you said, there's the extremes, but then there's the middle ground. I guess possibly you're probably going to be in the middle ground most of the time, but then in like really extreme situations, you have to adopt either of the extreme ways of dealing with a friend, I guess, or being a friend, like, in many ways. So yeah, pretty interesting story writing there. But yeah. I think this is, I guess, an interesting, if I may, basically go on an interesting tangent to set us up for the next video, basically. And I think the interesting tangent here is that so we've spoken about Krishna about like now this is the third time, and how in many ways there's like the story of so there was the Bhishma story, and then there's the Krishna's example of the same values, and then there's now Karna's story, and then Krishna's example of the same values, and in many ways, I think there's other places here where you see there's a supposed human character who has these principles and values and or basically they're like 100% extreme characteristic or a personification of a characteristic. Like in the case of Bhishma, it was basically his oath or his vows and sticking to his word, and Karna is basically his loyalty and friendship. And then you have the other example of Krishna, who is literally a divine character in the story. So he's a god who somehow portrays the exact same characteristics, but on a much measured level or in a much more level-headedness way of utilizing, where he's very objective about his choices. He's very logical about his choices. He doesn't basically live in the extremes. He's always somewhere in the middle ground of the spectrum a lot of times. And I think the conversation or the question is basically, is that what is seen as a god-like character? Is that basically why he's kind of seen as the god? Is because he's making the right choices all the time, and not because, or rather, I think I've said this to you before. He's making the right choices not because he's the god, but I'd say he is a god because he's making the right choices, and I think that's the interesting tangent I think we can explore the next time.
Yeah, sure. So, so personally, I'm not like religious, but I understand why people call him God, or why in that point of time it was written like that way. Maybe yes, you're right. That's because he's not doing anything supernatural. Like maybe he did in the story, but maybe the main reason is because of his qualities and virtues, like how to act, like take the right decisions, and like be measured, be balanced. Don't fall into the extreme. Don't think it's very intellectual to think that way. Like you have to think through everything. Just don't make up your mind about something and then follow that for the rest of your life or something. You have to. Each situation is different. Each context is different. Each circumstance is different. So if you're a smart person, if you're a thinking person, you should not make up your mind so early about something. It's like you always have to analyze every situation rather than just because it's very it could be construed as like lazy thinking that you when you're 4 or 5 you make up these rules, I'm going to follow these and all that no matter what happens, so that life becomes easy for you to follow a set of rules. But then there are times when you have to break them, when you have to bend them. So yeah, it was an interesting tangent. Maybe we can explore that in future videos.
Yep. So I'm gonna call that. So I just thought of a real nice nutshell way of describing that, and I think the way I would describe it is so. I guess we hear a lot of times, at least in modern religion or basically in Christianity is probably where I've heard it the most. Is that the saying is man was created in God's image, but I guess the question that I want to ask is, was God created in man's ideal image of himself? And I guess that's the real question.
Yes, so that goes into anthropomorphism, right? So
Yeah.
that's like assigning like non-human entities human qualities. So yes, we think we are the best species on earth, so someone who made us must look like us. Yeah, we can explore that in a different video, but that would be an interesting conversation as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we've come to the end of this one, and see you all again soon for another video.
Yeah, see you all again soon. We'll be back with one more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.